You're listening to the Quint podcast.
As the coronavirus infections shoot up to 14.6 million worldwide, we finally have some hopeful news regarding vaccines. COVID-19 vaccine trials from Oxford University in the UK, from China and from the German biotech firm BioNTech have shown positive results in their clinical trials. More than 150 countries, India included, are in a hunt to find a vaccination at the earliest to be able to curb the soaring infection rates. And as of now, these candidates are ahead of that race. The Oxford-AstraZeneca study, which is effectively in the first spot right now, has been showing promising results from the very start. The preliminary data from the early trial show that the vaccine not only appears to be safe, but it's also giving it double protection. While the others, that is the Chinese vaccine being developed by CanSino and studies from Germany's BioNTech, which are also moving in an equal pace, have induced safe and significant immune responses. So with a handful of vaccines yielding positive results, how much longer before a vaccine comes to our rescue? You're listening to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbari. In this podcast, we'll be shortly joined by Vaishali Sood, the editor of Quint, which is the Quint's health vertical. So let's jump right into what we know so far. Where exactly does the experimental vaccine being developed by the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca stand right now? We know that it was the first to enter the final stages of clinical trial late in June, and on 21st July, the research group published the early results from the trials. And this one has been grabbing all the limelights because the trials involving more than 1,000 people show that the vaccine was safe and it could stimulate the body to produce both antibodies and killer T cells. Now, there's been a lot of talk on killer T cells recently in all discussions to do with coronavirus, especially because these white blood cells stay in circulation for years and also actively work to destroy the infected cells. So the Oxford vaccine activating these cells gives it a positive edge in this mad run for vaccines. Now, to get into some of the finer details from the preliminary data from Oxford-AstraZeneca trials, how were the trials conducted exactly? According to a report on the conversation that was written by one of the researchers involved in the trials, a single dose of this vaccine was first administered to 543 healthy adults aged between 18 to 55. 543 others were given a controlled meningitis vaccine that gives similar minor reactions, including injection site redness and mild pain. And the results showed that the vaccine induces an antibody response within 28 days, which is similar range to those who have recovered from COVID-19. 10 volunteers were also given a second booster shot of the vaccine, which increased the antibody response to even higher levels. And I'm quoting one line from the report. Quote, 100% of blood samples from this group showed neutralizing activity against COVID-19 infection in a laboratory setting. End quote. Although it's been deemed safe, some side effects have been reported. Fatigue and headache were the most common side effects, but the BBC quoted researchers as saying that a paracetamol could fix it. But how exactly does the Oxford vaccine work? One of the identifiable features of coronavirus are the protein spikes or the crown-like features which the virus gets its name from. And that's exactly what's been allowing the virus to effectively infect human bodies. And most of the vaccines being developed right now, including the Oxford vaccine, are focusing on the protein spikes. Vaishali Sood, the editor of Quint, explains how the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine works.
Hi, Shorbari. It's been an exciting 24 hours, let's just say an exciting 1 week for coronavirus vaccines. There's preliminary data, trial data falling like raindrops everywhere. Now, obviously, the Oxford vaccine is the most talked about. It was the first to enter phase 3 trials for testing the efficacy of the vaccine. What we are talking about today is the early data that they've released of the phase 1-2 trials that they'd conducted in April and May. Now, just to explain to you how this vaccine works, both the Oxford vaccine and China's CanSino vaccine are viral vector vaccines. They're both experimental vaccines. They work by altering the genes of another common virus called adenovirus. So it mimics the coronavirus and induces an immune response in the body. To get into a little bit more detail, the vaccine that Oxford is developing is being made from a genetically engineered virus that causes a common cold in chimpanzees. Now, this virus underwent heavy modifications to ensure it doesn't cause infection and to imitate the coronavirus. This was achieved when scientists transferred genetic instructions from the spike protein that you see in the coronavirus. The spike protein is essential because the coronavirus essentially uses its spike protein to invade human cells. How it works is by building the body's immune response against the spike protein of the coronavirus. As I said, it's an experimental vaccine. The Oxford team has previously used the same technology to produce vaccine candidates for flu, Zika, and Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, which is another form of a coronavirus.
Now, the big question is, how significant is this development? If we are to read the science, it definitely is promising. However, experts are cautiously optimistic. They say that the results are promising, but even Oxford researchers admit that they don't know how long will these responses last. It's too early to say based on the data they have, and some experts are also saying that producing quote-unquote enough antibodies can be dicey as different patients produce different antibody responses. The World Health Organization, that has been closely monitoring the developments of this vaccine, lauded the development and said that it's all good news, but there's still a long way to go. This is Dr. Mike Ryan, the Executive Director of World Health Organization's Emergencies Program.
I think it is good news. I mean, effectively we have 23 COVID-19 candidate vaccines in clinical development, and as of today we add one candidate vaccine for which phase 1 clinical data is available. So we have 3 which is available in peer-reviewed journals, plus we have one other, the BioNTech Pfizer product, which the data is available on pre-publication. So it's great, first of all, to see the data coming through into peer-reviewed journals. I think the data is very new. We do welcome the study and congratulate our colleagues at the Oxford University's Jenner Institute and the Oxford Vaccine Group, and obviously our colleagues at AstraZeneca for getting this data out there. Again, this vaccine was given to 1,000 healthy adults between the ages of 18 and 55, and certainly did not appear to have any serious adverse events other than the expected, in some cases, chills, muscle aches, headaches, and the vaccine did generate neutralizing antibody, I think, in all participants, and in a very small number of participants that were given a booster dose, those responses were even greater. So in generating T-cell mediated responses and generating neutralizing antibody, this is a positive result. But again, there is a long way to go. These are phase 1 studies. We now need to move into larger scale real-world trials, but it is good to see more data and more products moving into this very important phase of vaccine discovery, and we congratulate our colleagues for the progress they have made. It's a complex challenge.
But how long exactly is quote-unquote a long way to go? Developing a vaccine we know typically takes years, and it's rare for a vaccine to be developed under 5 years. Even the mumps vaccine, which is considered to be the quickest vaccine development in history, took 4 years. But given the race against time with the current pandemic, researchers are already making history with their pace. All around the world, more than 160 vaccines are currently being developed against the coronavirus. Some are still in the early stages, while around 21 are in human testing levels. And among these, after Oxford, the vaccines being developed by CanSino in China, BioNTech in Germany, Pfizer in USA, and of course, Moderna vaccine have also produced positive results. They've yielded safe and immunogenic responses. With so many candidates showing promising results, what is the future looking like? Vaishali explains what are the next steps in the study for these vaccines and how soon can we expect vaccines against coronavirus.
Now, of course, besides the Oxford vaccine and CanSino vaccine, there are two other vaccine candidates that have been spoken about a lot in the last few days. One is US-based Moderna. Moderna's vaccine was the first to go into human trial stages. and there's Pfizer and a German company called BioNTech's vaccine. Both these vaccines have also in their initial data found that they produce a strong immune response, and they both use similar technology, which is basically they use a specially engineered genetic material called mRNA, and so it's not a viral vector vaccine. They use engineered genetic material to fight the coronavirus. This kind of a vaccine has never been made before, but the initial results from the Moderna vaccine trials and from Pfizer and BioNTech's trials have been encouraging. They both have produced strong immune response in the body. CanSino incidentally used a adenovirus that's responsible for common cold in humans. So their trial data has not been seen to be as exciting, because what some of the experts are saying is that it is producing, human body already has antibodies against this common cold virus, and so it's not producing the kind of immune response one would have hoped it would have. Now, for all these vaccine candidates, where the future is, well, for Oxford, it's pretty straightforward. Their phase 3 trials are already on. They have phase 3 trials that have started in the UK, in South Africa, and in Brazil. And very soon, the US is going to launch a phase 3 vaccine trial with around 30,000 volunteers. And those trials will be crucial. A large-scale vaccine trial is essential to see how much of a protection can be offered by the vaccine, because currently, while all the experts have been excited about the Oxford vaccine, the makers of this vaccine themselves are saying it's too early to say how much of a protection this vaccine offers and how long do these neutralizing antibodies last. So, as I said, to judge the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine, larger third phase trials are essential. In the meantime, as we know, AstraZeneca has already promised 2 billion doses of this vaccine, and countries like Netherlands, the UK, the US, France, Germany are already in talks with the company to procure early dosages. So, even before the license has been guaranteed, dosages have been booked. And amongst those who book them also include NGOs who say they're going to provide these vaccines free of cost to countries that need it the most. Similarly, Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech's vaccine goes into stage 3 trials end of this month.
Clearly, a lot of hopes are hinging on the Oxford trials right now. As Vaishali pointed out, some pharma companies are already committing to manufacturing billion doses of this vaccine, and recently India's Pune-based Serum Institute also joined the league. After the promising results in Oxford, on 21st July, Adar Poonawala, the CEO of the institute, announced that they would be manufacturing 1 billion doses of the vaccine after getting the required regulatory approvals to do so. But as experts say, there's still a long way to go. If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.